Ready? You have the cameras rolling?
Welcome to Outspoken,
This better be good.
a show about
Floods, mutants, plagues, man-eating plants.
actually, it's about thought-provoking, compelling conversations with people who have something important to say, a good story to tell, or knowledge we can learn from.
Oh, good for you.
And now,
Hold on to your butts.
here's Scott and Curtis.
All right. Hello, and thank you for joining Outspoken, brought to you by Prodigy Talent Training. I'm Scott, and here with us is Curtis. Hey, Curtis.
Hey, welcome, Scott.
We have, this is going to take a bit because I got a few things. I got a list I got to run through. So, co-host of the Newsmax show Wise Guys, two-time Golden Glove champion, celebrity fitness trainer, reality star, Master Chef, stunt woman, boxing commentator, charity spokesperson, disadvantaged youth camp founder, community advocate, political activist, and I'm sure I'm missing something, Cara. But our guest today is Cara Castronuova. Cara, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It does sound like a pretty long list. You don't realize it. It's just kind of like an accumulation of my life. I don't know. Did you say champion boxer?
Yes, I did. Two-time
Okay.
Golden Glove boxing champion.
That was kind of one of my favorite accomplishments. So,
Oh, cool.
It's
Well, you know,
quite an
that's where we wanted to
accomplishment,
start was, so I'll just go ahead and start at the, well, not the beginning, but
Can I,
maybe
before we get started, Scott, can
Okay.
I just say, how many times do you get to say all of those things together in one sentence?
uh,
Golden Gloves
I try-
boxing champion, 501c3 founder, and television host. Hey, come on, Tucker. Show us your bona fides. Put up your dukes.
well, I feel like boxing was really what prepared me for all the stuff I'm doing now, which is the advocacy and, the news is not easy, covering news. I also write for the Gateway Pundit, so I'm a writer. I feel sometimes I'm a better writer than on camera, believe it or not, because I get to get really detailed. But the stuff I'm writing is really kind of investigative. So you have to really be unafraid to do it and not, afraid to speak out against the government, which nowadays is almost like it's a thought crime. If you say anything bad on social media, you'll get banned for life. And you know what that means,
and maybe get a
Yeah.
visit
So-
from a three-letter agency too, huh?
Exactly. I have been, just so you know.
Yeah, someone said
Wow.
a couple times.
Yeah, a couple times. Yeah, I mean, for no reason. It's an intimidation thing, and people think you're making this up, but in America now, it's not made up. A lot of people I know have gotten visits from the FBI.
Really?
So, yeah.
Can you tell us more about that, Gary? I don't want to, put you
Well,
in
just
awkward
to me,
positions or anything.
I've been outspoken about it, and I feel like that's what protects you most. It's because
Right.
I was a protester on January 6th. I was there at the Capitol, didn't go in the building, didn't get anywhere near it. I'm an investigative journalist, and they came to my house twice to question me about, where I was, what I saw. And that's when I really started to do some investigation of my own, which is, are they allowed to come to my house and harass me like this? Number one. And number two, who else are they harassing? And then I came to find out that there are multiple prisoners that are still in solitary confinement a year and 4 months after January 6th. To this day in solitary confinement in Washington, D.C., pretrial detention, which is really un-American, unconstitutional. And it's just, I can't believe it's still going on. I can't believe a year and a half later, after all this fighting that we've been doing, that there's still people down there rotting away. Literally, their lives are passing them by for trespassing.
And it's interesting, we're not hearing as much about the trespasses that took place during, for example, the Kavanaugh hearings, right?
No, you don't hear anything about them at all. It's not equal, it's not equal protection under the law. Obviously, there was a lot of things done by the other political, the other Democrats at one point in history. And a lot of times, I mean, it's called protesting. And if you're going to punish one side, you should punish the other. That's why it's called political persecution. And that's why, not to start off on such a serious note, but it's just, it's what consumes a lot of my day-to-day life, because I'm one of the only people fighting for the prisoners that they're starting to become personal friends. A lot of them only get a certain amount of calls a day in prison, and a lot of their families have disowned them, and their girlfriends no longer want to talk to them. So I'm kind of the one person on a lot of their caller lists. You have to put a person on a call list. So I'll get a call once a week from this guy, another one. They just want to talk to somebody, and they have no one to talk to. And it's really heart-wrenching and heartbreaking.
Is this Guy Reffitt the one that you talked to?
Guy
'Cause I know
Reffitt
you were-
is right. He's very, the one Guy Redford's blessed in many ways, not because of the situation he's in, but he has a very loving family that stood behind him this whole time. And I met them when I went and I covered his case down in Washington. They were the first January 6th. That was the first trial for January 6th. I thought it was important that somebody cover it that was going to tell it fairly, because I saw that CNN and all the regular, fake news media outlets were there. And I was very surprised that like Fox News wasn't there and other news stations I thought should be there. So I went down and covered it for the Gateway Pundit. And it was like nothing I've never seen anything like it in my life. It was almost like I was watching a court in a third world country. But the one thing he has is a lot of family members, and I did get to know them pretty well and to get to know him pretty well through that whole process. But he was found guilty on all charges. His defense attorney, who was a very terrible public defender, never called a witness to the stand, didn't give any evidence whatsoever, didn't even defend him. And now he's looking at decades in prison. Literally never even entered the Capitol. He was shot down by police with paintball guns or whatever it was, pepper spray.
Rubber bullets, yeah.
Right. And he was in front of the Capitol, kind of like crippled and just laying there, like, in a ball. That was as far as he got. And somehow the prosecution was able to, quote unquote, prove him guilty for being the tip of the spear of the quote unquote insurrection. And somehow he was responsible for the entire, that was what stuck with me, that just because he was very loud with the megahorn, that made him responsible for the entire crowd and what they did behind him. No one nobody at January 6th knew each other. So what that's telling people is that if they go to a protest or if they go to a rally and they want to voice their opinion with the megaphone, or they want to scream and say what they believe, that one day could be held against them and they could be blamed for everybody that came in after them, for the whole entire crowd's, actions. And that's really going to discourage anybody from going to a rally at this point and exercising the First Amendment on so many levels. For example, look at what's happening to Alex Jones. Some people don't like him, some people do. He was there that day begging people to turn around and stop being violent, but they're going after him for helping organize. Like, I guess he was some sort of fundraiser for this protest that went, I guess it went left for lack, or right, or whatever, for lack of a better term. But they're holding, it's like, if you want to organize a protest, you should not be held responsible for the actions of counter protesters and people fighting with each other. You should always feel comfortable with wanting to, when you want to organize a protest. And me, as a person who organizes them, it's very scary knowing that you could be held liable in court, criminal court and civil court.
Yeah,
now,
InfoWars just
especially
found
we
Chapter
don't
11.
have a public defender that aligns with you at all and really doesn't care.
none of them care. The public defenders reprimand them, the judges reprimand them, the public defenders are just terrible people. I don't know why they're public defenders if they're acting more like part of the prosecution, and that's the honest to God's truth. So it's frustrating.
Just for the audience, really quick, that on your website, citizensapp.us, if you get a chance, it's amazing. That has the stories of all the people that are now sitting in prison, and when you go through those stories, it is incredible. Some of the stories, and one that just stuck out was Jessica Watkins. I mean,
Jessica Watkins, right?
Very articulate, very well spoken, and
right,
sitting in jail.
Right. The interesting thing is she's transgender, and so she's in DC jail with the guys there. And the left, if this was somebody in their camp, they would be like, this is ridiculous. She should be in the female jail. She's a female. But she actually loves being in the jail with in DC jail, more so because she feels protected, because the other guys are also there from January 6th. And she feels like they protect her from the rest of the jail population. So she prefers it there because they're like-minded, what they call patriots, and they stick together for the most part. But she was one of the Oath Keepers who were, as are somewhat of a militia group. Really were there doing security. There's not a single Oath Keeper that day that has a violent charge. They marched through in formation and they marched out, and they're the ones that are being charged with seditious conspiracy now, which is I don't think been used in a long time, or anyone's been found guilty of this in a long time. Seditious conspiracy for marching in and out of the Capitol building. That's a serious charge to have. She was one of the people in there, and a lot of people that are getting charged with seditious conspiracy were just people who were in the Telegram chat. So just be fearful of what Telegram chat you go in, because if you go in the wrong one and it gets there's an indictment and you're in that, you get wrapped up in that indictment. That's basically what happened to a lot of people that they're persecuting. So the Oath Keepers is part of, again, like serious subject matter. Sorry, it's something I've been thinking about when it comes to the Second Amendment. Everybody talks about they're trying to take away our guns, and I feel like America has a very special mindset, which is that if the government gets out of line, we have a right to check and balance them. And I don't mean by starting a war, waging war, or using violence, but the Second Amendment was written, I know, not so that we could, guns were not for hunting or protecting your house. The whole intent of the Second Amendment was you should be able to check and balance the government. And that's why they wrote in that you should be able to have a militia group.
Cara, let me ask you something. How, in your opinion, should this have been done? I mean,
well, look, I don't know, but I finished the thought about the militia group. They're trying to use a group that's really barely a militia to sort of put the fear of God in everybody that wants to be in a militia, to get that mentality, to castrate America, to get the mentality out of their head that you could ever challenge the government. Because the Second Amendment is what, like, all these like alpha people, women and men, are like, there's the Second Amendment. We could challenge the government. This is our house. This is our country. We the people. That whole mentality, they're trying to literally castrate and cut off Americans by taking away militias, by taking away guns. It's just symbolic stuff. Like, people don't really want to wage war with the government, but it's in their mind. They feel like that we do have the right, and it makes them indignant when they see politicians that are doing the wrong thing. And they're just trying to cut that out of America. The next generation will be completely gone from. But how could this have been done differently when it comes to the persecution, when it comes to the arrests?
Well, clearly the persecution and the court proceedings, I think lots of fodder there. But I'm talking about the protests in general, right? Let me play devil's advocate a little bit here. So
yeah, go ahead.
So you got Trump on the day of the rally, right? I think Trump knows who his base, or knew who his base was, and Trump is a guy who will rile up the crowd. That's what he does really well. Do you think he really thought that the crowd would enter the Capitol, or do you think he was actually calling on them to be outside, making a loud protest, making a loud noise, making themselves heard? What do you think was in his mind, and what do you think was in the protest organizers' mind when they took the action to enter?
To the best of my ability, I'll answer that question from my understanding, just by being a Trump supporter, from feeling like I understand his mindset, for feeling like he usually has a thumbprint on the heartbeat of like his base and who they are. There were so many Trump rallies in the past 4 years prior to that, or 5 years, because he was campaigning. Never once was there any violence. Never once was there anything like that. So I don't think he had any idea that any of that stuff was going to happen. I had no idea, and I was there. I when I walked up on the Capitol and I saw people climbing walls, I was completely in shock.
Right.
But the feeling at the same time, the feeling wasn't a threatening feeling. It was kind of more like these disorderly guys that were like a lot of drug guys, like just being disorderly. Never there was a time where I felt like, oh my God, this is an insurrection. They're trying to take over the government. I'm just like, everybody's getting out of hand. People are just trying to get their stupid selfies in. Like, look, I climbed the wall. That was the feeling I was getting. Like, it was just a bunch of very disorderly, frustrated people that were getting kind of out of hand and disorderly, and they were trespassing. But never once did I have the feeling, and I was there and I'm very perceptive, that there was any type of nefarious thing, like we're going to overtake the government, we're going to kidnap a senator, anything like that they're trying to say. And if that was going to happen, there would have been guns. Nobody would, used weapons at all. The only people that weapons were used against was actually Trump supporters by the police. We could talk more about that later. But
how many people were there? You mean you were actually there? So how many people?
I would say hundreds of thousands. I couldn't even begin to estimate. It was so crowded. Hundreds of thousands of people were surely there, and not many got into the building compared to the amount that was there. So the way that they're using that to paint the whole day is frustrating. Not to mention now all this videos coming out of cops letting people in, and not letting them into, like, everybody's seen the outside video where the cops are like letting them into the bicycle racks past the gates.
I've seen those. Those are really confusing. They literally just opened the door and said, "Yeah, this way."
There's more, right?
Like they were letting in delivery
doors.
People. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And there's more video of that hasn't been shown. That's why the guy that was found not guilty in a judge trial, a bench trial is when a judge is the jury, which is what they all have to go for now, because the jury is compromised. Everybody thinks it was an insurrection thanks to the news.
Right.
They'll never give these guys a fair trial. So a judge is able to judge the law better. So the one guy that picked the judge jury, he was found not guilty because the lawyer, his actual defense attorney, not a public defender, presented footage of him being let in by cops And the guy was like, this is a joke. Cops let him in. Like, you pass through a red light, and even though it's illegal to pass, if a cop waves you through, everybody knows that doesn't, then that's therefore it's not illegal. And there's Supreme Court precedent on this. Like if a cop tells you to do something or allows you to do something, even though it's against the law is on your side in that case because you were listening to a police officer.
Hey, Cara, just a question about that particular case. I can't remember the name of the defendant, but I know who you're talking about. In order for a bench trial to happen, both parties have to agree. The prosecution and the defense have to agree on a bench trial. Do you know why the prosecution agreed on it?
I don't know why, and I'm not. But I want to become more familiar with what the process is. I know it is a process that the defense has to try to push for, and I'm not certain of that answer. I really don't know. I can't say, but I think that in certain circumstances, if you push for it, you can get a bench trial. And I wouldn't stand for less if I was any one of these guys, unless it's a really unfair judge. But the judge that was that judge was a fair judge, and anybody that's a judge, this is going to be their legacy. Like one day, someone's going to look at the facts of the case and say, okay, how did he find him guilty when the cops were letting him in? Like a judge isn't going to make, I don't think, an unfair decision where a jury is completely obviously biased.
Yeah.
And they're more prone to judging by emotion, the emotion that they feel and what they saw in the news rather than what the actual facts of the case are.
Got it. All right, we're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back with Cara Castronuova. Fascinating interview. Stay tuned to Outspoken.
If you Google how to become a media host, in less than a second, you'll get 7 easy steps.
Begin developing skills in high school.
It's a little late for that.
Earn bachelor's degrees.
Wish I would have known that years ago.
Gain professional experience and develop skills.
What skills? Oh, here's a good one. Start locally.
Where?
Build a network.
How?
Choose a specialty.
What do you mean?
Advance your position.
Sure.
I don't know about you, but those tips did not illuminate a clear path or highlight the actual skills you're going to need to become a working media host.
Look, if you're watching us right now, you're interested in learning how to host a talk show
or a YouTube show
or how to become a polished and professional spokesperson for brands that will pay you to represent them.
Well, we're here to show you just how to do that.
I'm Chad.
And I'm Leslie, and we are full-time media hosts with over a decade of experience in live TV hosting, teleprompter reading, brand ambassadorship, and being professional spokespeople.
And we didn't start these careers in high school, nor did we earn bachelor's degrees in these fields.
Oh, no. It took us years of mistakes and lost opportunities to gain the professional experience, skills, and knowledge that got us where we are today within the world of hosting.
And we want to share with you what we know to be the most important skills you'll need and the key strategies you must know to turn hosting from something you've always dreamed about into a viable, lucrative career.
And the best part is, it can start right now.
Simply sign up now for our 6-week virtual How to Become a Media Host course.
And we're back. The Outspoken show with Scott and Curtis and our special guest, Cara Castronuova. Hope you've been paying attention. Cara's given us about 3 hours worth of content in the first 15 minutes. Fantastic interview. Lots to talk about. Cara, you were describing some of the interactions you're having with the J6 defendants, and you were talking about just how lopsided the coverage is, and part of that is, news networks and people in general don't have access to the discovery materials that are presented in trial that the legal parties have, and you have had some access to that through your conversations with the actual defendants themselves. Yes,
I have. Yes, the news media has a narrative that they're all just trying to follow. They would never dig deeper and actually speak to the prisoners and get any of the information that I've gotten, which is by speaking to them and to their attorneys. They're able to watch the discovery video that they finally gave them. It took a very long time. Video that is supposed to incriminate them, but actually doesn't. It does the opposite. And other video from that day that might not even have anything to do with their trial. What they do is they dump them with a large hard drive of footage, because it's called like a needle in a haystack, where the government is like, here, now find your video. Here's literally thousands of hours worth of footage. Well, unless you have a lawyer that has a very large staff, it's going to be very hard for you to find anything useful. So they're skimming through this video and they're watching stuff that doesn't even have to do with them, of police officers beating people, of police antagonizing the crowd, shooting grenades into the crowd at the very beginning before anybody got violent. Stuff like that will never be seen on the mainstream media, and also other types of discovery, like documents that lawyers have told me about and that prisoners have told me about, but can't be released to the public or to the media. But they're just telling me about it in conversation, and it's something that we're fighting to get released. But it takes such large resources, not just a couple people like me. So, we're always looking for people to help out. Eventually, the truth will come out. But if only, I wouldn't say these other news organizations, because they're just monsters and they don't care, like the actual news organizations themselves. I think that the reporters have to be good people inside and do care, but I don't think that their network would let them cover it fairly anyway. Some of the information that we see, then maybe they would change the narrative. I don't know, but I just think that they're so bent set on describing this as an insurrection that it's all they care about. Really quick story. Yesterday, I was eating in the city, and I'm not going to name names and call people out, but I saw a reporter. Let's just say he works from MSNBC. He's pretty famous.
Found a restaurant that was open. How many masters?
Yeah, in New York City. In New York City, they actually lack things because the mayor is trying to gain popularity points until the next election comes, and then obviously they're going to put some new mandates down. But I ran into a man who works for MSNBC, and I'm like, this guy, maybe he, let me tell him what I know about the political prisoners and see if he'd bring me on his show and actually have a debate with me. And he was very resistant and didn't want to hear anything about it. So they're just not interested whatsoever in hearing any new information or anything that's truthful if it doesn't go with their narrative, whether it's them or it's their network. But it's really very difficult. My goal has been since the very beginning to get this information out to the public, and I have, but I've gotten it out to the, what's the quote unquote right, which it's sad because it shouldn't be that way. Right. And now it's like, well, how do I get people on the left and in the middle to care, or at least moderate Democrats to care? How do I get them to care about this stuff? That's been the challenge, and that's kind of like my next step. How do I get people that are in the middle politically or on the left to actually care about what's happening?
Right. So let's set up, and Scott, I want to bring you in here. Let's level set for everyone. Nobody here is advocating sedition, right? Nobody here is advocating waging a war with the U.S. government. I think that's not what we're talking about here. And clearly, Cara, you're a fighter, and that's evident in everything you've told us, and we can tell how deeply this touches you, and how hard you're fighting for it. But I think, Scott, you'd agree, nobody here is advocating sedition. That's not really the story we're talking about.
No, not at all. I think number one, I would never advocate that. Number two, it's not practical. You know what I mean? It's like it's just not practical. People aren't stupid. People were, like I said, it was just a bunch, like the Proud Boys are a drinking fraternity. They can't even organize a bar night.
You're going to need a lot more guns.
Yeah. Right. And the Oath Keepers are kind of like this goody two shoes security team. They're not like this well-armed militia. They probably own personal guns, and that's it. They know damn well they would never be able to overthrow the government. That was never the intention. It was just to make a statement, to go there, to rally, to be loud, to look cool on their stupid, everybody's with their if they thought they were doing anything wrong, do you think everybody would have been taping themselves in the crowd behind them? And
great point.
It makes no sense. So everybody was just having a good time, to be honest, and then it went too far.
I think you can say too that if you go through your site and you read the stories, some of them made really bad choices, but there's got to be some context to those choices. That
you can name a few. Like which one?
Well, I'm thinking of there's someone who had taken like the lectern or something like that. Of
course, yeah.
But when you compare that to the other stories, and I'll say, for instance, like the Antifa stories, or the guy who drove his SUV through it, who are all out on probation, it just seems like there's
wrong.
Yeah, it just doesn't
it's
fit.
It's just like you're trying to overthrow the government by stealing a bottle of whiskey in the coat rack and posing for your Instagram story with it. It's so ridiculous, and this is how they painted this guy. And now he was found guilty on all charges, some pretty heavy charges, and he's going to jail for a long time. Where just by comparison, there was a 1 year anniversary rally for January 6th for Jeremy Brown, one of the detainees. He was a decorated vet. He's in Florida, and there was an Antifa man who came with bombs strapped to him and bomb guides on him. He was arrested at the rally, and he got out on bail a few days later. You know what I mean? He actually had bombs with the intent to bomb people at a rally, at some near a federal building. People were protesting, let our friend Jeremy out of jail peacefully, and this guy comes along with the bomb, and he's out within days. So it's just ridiculous. And then somebody steals a coat rack and a half a bottle of whiskey and poses with it on Instagram laughing, and he's facing decades in jail.
So, Cara, I want to talk about how you got where you are, how you got into this sort of advocacy, how you got into the political scene from where you started, even before your boxing career. Take us back where you came from. Now, you came from the Queens area, right?
I live on the borderline of Queens and Long Island. So yeah,
Long
it's
Island,
everybody
okay.
considers it Queens, yes, but it's technically Long Island.
Okay,
Yeah,
got it.
different
Thanks for the
places.
correction.
Yeah.
Nobody throwing any stones here. So how did you get started in boxing? Did your father bring you into it?
Yeah, my father was a Marine, and he was a boxer in the Marines, and he would teach me and my brothers in the garage of our house when we were younger, how to fight. So that was kind of a big part of my childhood. I guess it was the way that like my dad knew how to bond with us and teach us something that he knew. And it's a pretty inexpensive sport. You just need some gloves and a bag, like one of those old fashioned canvas bags. And we would do drills running up and down the block.
Yeah.
And
Those
you know, it
canvas
was,
bags will just rip your hands to shreds too, won't they?
yeah, it was great. It was like a good memory. At the time I was annoyed, but now I'm like, wow. And it taught me like the fundamentals of form for kicking and punching. And then my
Yeah.
dad passed away when I was 14. And I think I came back into it just as a way to kind of feel close to him again, maybe as a late teenager, and started going to the boxing gyms in my community, which, you know, again, I live in Long Island, but I don't live in the best part, where everybody thinks Long Island's this wealthy place. There's many different facets of Long Island. And there's community gyms at the time in Long Island that were put there specifically to, like, you know, help kids and help youth stay off the streets and learn how to box. And it was such a great program. And I started doing that program and learning how to box, and met all these great old fashioned trainers, literally like Mickey from Rocky. It's a real thing. The bond between a trainer and a boxer is real. That's the most realistic part of the whole Rocky movie, even more so than the fight scenes, which aren't that realistic.
You're a bum, Rock.
Right. It's the relationship between Mickey and Rocky that really rings true. You meet so many great people, and you know, you put your life into their hands, and they love you as if you're a son or a daughter, because you're trusting them and putting your life in their hands. So the couple of boxing trainers I've had, I would do anything for. If they asked me for a kidney, I would probably go donate one, because they were with me through the hardest times of my life. So that was an interesting point in my life. I was boxing through college. I was in a sorority, but I wasn't really doing like all the sorority things, because I couldn't really do that. Boxing and go out late at night and drink. And if I did, I wouldn't drink. So I was kind of living like a nun, even though I was in one of the funnest sororities in college, and boxing. And it was
That goes
just
together
you know,
really well. Sororities and boxing.
it didn't really, but it was fun. My friends like loved it. They used to come love watching. You know, I was doing all the hard work in the training, and they would just come and watch. So
bring some wine coolers and cheer you on.
Yeah.
Now, how did you make your way to Gleason's? Gleason's is history.
Well, Gleason's is obviously one of the best gyms, and has the most women. When I first started at the PAL in Long Island and the community centers, it was all men, and I was boxing with men. And you know, you got to get practice boxing with other women. And the city had so many women at the time, and they were really coming out strong. Women were really starting to become competitive fighters. So I made the decision. It's a great story, actually. I'll tell it really briefly. I fought this girl, Vanessa, who's now my best friend. It's like really like Mickey and Apollo. Like, I'm not kidding this stuff. When you fight someone, you like at the end, you wind up just somehow becoming best friends, and you could hate them so much. But it was a girl who was a rival of mine. We fought. She beat me. She didn't beat me, and I'll tell her to her face. I thought I was robbed. I was so angry and so embarrassed and so mad. So I basically just, I was like, I'm going to find out her gym. I'm going to go spar and beat the crap out of her, and show her she didn't win the fight. So I like trudged to Gleason's gym. I brought like some ex-boyfriend of mine with me to like work my corner, who had no idea what he was doing. And I went there, and I just like looked her up, and I boxed her. We literally beat the crap out of each other for like 12 rounds. And none of us were going to say, I give up. No one wanted to give up. And then finally her trainer was like, all right, he was like, I got to call this off. Good job. And then I just came back every day after that. We were best friends after that. She's still like my closest friend. And this is like 20 years ago. Well, maybe 15. A long time ago. Because, you really respect someone when they keep fighting, no matter how hard you hit them, and they keep fighting you, and vice versa. At the end of it, you're like, we're soul sisters. You know what I mean?
That was the beginning of a kind of a crew, right? Didn't you travel in a crew of women boxers?
Yeah,
that were
yeah.
Quite
I
good.
was lucky. I was so lucky. It was like a sorority of boxers. It was kind of like a combination of what I went through with the sorority. These were girls that wanted to box. And we all became champions, and it was because of each other. You know, we really just pushed each other and gave each other the best sparring. Like the harder we would beat each other up, the more we were helping each other. And we knew that. So if I see my friend getting out of shape, I'm like, what the hell are you doing? I need you to freaking, beat me up so I could defend myself better. Get like, so we became really good friends through the years, and they all moved to Florida. It's sad. They got out of here
Yeah.
like a year
Well,
ago.
there's a lot of that
Hey,
going
wait a
on
minute.
right
What,
now
what
in
do you
New
mean
York.
sad? Florida's great.
Well, I'm happy for them, but for me, it's like I was hanging out. They were like kind of like I hang out with them on all the holidays, and we would have a lot of fun. And now all of a sudden, they all just up left and went to Florida during the lockdown. They're like, forget this, bye. And I can't really leave New York now because I have a lot of stuff going on here. But they were able to, and they're loving it down there. So I've been meaning to pay them a visit. So yeah.
That's great. So for those who may not be familiar, Gleason's got quite a storied history. Muhammad Ali. I didn't realize it was actually one of the most prominent gyms for women. I didn't realize that.
Well, it's just in general one of the most prominent gyms. So it'll be for women go there, and just because of the traction, there's more people in Brooklyn, I guess, and Queens. So yeah, the most competitive. A lot of competitive females come out of there. I don't know now. What it's like. I know that there's still a lot of competitive females there, and that's where you meet up. It's like even if you're from two different gyms, it's like, all right, let's meet at Gleason's and we'll spar there, because they have 4 or 5 rings going on at once, and you never have to wait for a ring. And there's always someone that'll work your corner if you don't have a trainer with you that day. It's just kind of like an action-packed place.
So I got to ask you, Cara. I've got 3 daughters, and they're all getting into martial arts. They've been doing it less than a year, but they just had their first tournament. Came home with some hardware. I think two trophies each.
That was yesterday, right? That was yesterday.
Last week.
Last week. Okay.
What advice would you give to women, young women, like young girls who want to get into boxing? Because I gotta say I've never met a boxer who's been around as much as you have and fought as much as you have and looks anywhere near as good as you do.
Well, thank you.
So what advice would you give to young women? What is it about boxing that's attractive? What is it about mixed martial arts that's attractive? What do you like about it?
Well, you have to really love it, and it has to be born inside of you to want to pursue it. You know what I mean? But I would say if someone wanting to get into it to go to a gym and just do it. You'll learn life skills that you could use for the rest of your life. I know a little kid telling this to, they're going to be like, oh, whatever. Like, what do they know about life skills? But
if it's coming from you, they're going to put more stock in the coming from dad.
It'll set you apart from everybody else, number one. And number two, people will not, like, if you'll never be afraid, because people sense when you could fight. Like I used to get in fist fights in high school all the time before I really knew how to fight. Like I kind of knew because of my dad, but I was very scrappy. And it's like people sense when you're a trained fighter. And no one's ever started a fist fight with me since the day I really learned how to box. And I never had to punch anyone. I never had to tell anyone I was a boxer. You carry yourself differently. So you could tell them that they'll never, ever be bullied, ever. And they don't have to fight anyone. If they did, great, they would hurt them. But well, that's not great, but you know what I mean? They're not going to get hurt, but they're going to carry themselves with a different way that it's almost like an animal instinct that other people sense, because we're all animals, and they sense that this person could fight and they're going to make them look stupid. So they will leave them alone.
Great advice, especially in New York these days. It's good to have some hand-to-hand skills for sure. Real quickly, I'd like to before we draw to a close, I'd like to hear a little bit about your journey from boxing in Brooklyn at Gleason's to Hollywood.
Sure. So, I mean, I feel like everything kind of leads into, at least in the pattern of my life. I don't know anybody else, but one door opens, another one closes, another one opens. So I was boxing, and it was The Biggest Loser, if that's what you're talking about. I was on the reality show, The Biggest Loser. I was a trainer, and the year that they hired me, they were doing a fight theme. So they did a casting call across America, and I sent in a tape, and I didn't even know what it was for. It just said, send in a tape of you training people, and they gave you a little description, and they're like $100 a day or something. They said it was way more than that, but I don't know why they put that down. They disguised it. And I sent in this cheesy tape that my brother made of me having, like, training people in my neighborhood, having them jumping over trash cans, like, just doing like this really gritty training, boxing training. And then all the other trainers that had sent in their tapes were like celebrity trainers training P. Diddy and like Rihanna. And I had like these people jumping over garbage cans and like, using rakes as like, I don't even know. It was
Like the
crazy.
original Rocky movie,
Right,
yeah.
exactly. And they called me from that tape. They're like, "Can you come to like Los Angeles tomorrow?" And I did an audition, and I messed up so bad. I almost feel like they like that. Like I accidentally like punched someone in the face that I was training, one of the producers, and I was like, "Oh my god, there goes my opportunity." And for some reason, they just liked me. I think they liked that I was very raw and like not Hollywood, not like anyone else who was coming there like all like with their matching outfit. Like, "Hi, I'm so," like I was very raw, and I think they like that. So I went on to do that, and it was a great experience because you get to like training people that are 500 pounds isn't something the average trainer could ever say that they did. Training 12 500 pounders to lose half their body weight in a less than 6 months to a year's time. And you get to see the human spirit in crazy ways because these people are fighting so hard. And it's interesting to watch a person kind of develop like that. It teaches you a lot about human what's the right word, nature, like human nature. Observing a 500-pound person go to 200 pounds in a couple months. It's very interesting to watch.
It's
I
crazy.
know you were a part of. So
Yeah.
I did that, and I got a taste of Hollywood. I did some other Hollywood stuff, and the part I didn't like about it the most was how fake I had to be. Reality TV is fake, even though it's quote unquote real. It's scripted, and you're expected to be a certain way, and you're expected to look a certain way. You're expected to behave a certain way. You have a lot of people breathing down your neck, and I always, even though it should have been a really happy time, for me it was very lonely, and I felt like a phony. You always, it's like an imposter syndrome. Like you feel like you're an imposter because you're not really being your real self. Like I wanted to sometimes like yell at these people in a real way, or like or just be like, this isn't right. There was just so many things that I didn't agree with, and I was unable to. So that's why I feel like go fast forwarding to the modern day. I was canceled, in a few different ways. Like, for example, I was kicked off Facebook for what's they're saying is irreversible. And I did something so terrible, which I don't know what it was. So you don't have anything to like lose. After a while, when you just say whatever you want, like nothing
You
can
probably
stop
said that you didn't like the new Star Wars movies. That's probably what did it.
I don't know. To tell the story really quick. The story is I was standing up for the prisoners, and I was at a rally in Washington D.C. and I was so just sick and tired of them describing. The news kept saying that it was a white supremacist rally that was going to D.C. to support these prisoners, and that was the whole narrative by Nancy Pelosi, by the Washington Post, by the New York Times, that it was a big conglomeration of white supremacist groups meeting. And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? It was such a lie. And I'm like, so I said, do I look like a white supremacist to you? That was like the first thing I said to the crowd. And I posted that clip of my speech on Facebook. And then all of a sudden I lost my Facebook account of 20 years, all my memories, my grandparents' photos, videos, everything. And it says it's irreversible. The next story I'm working on investigatively is proving that Facebook is working with the government to censor people. It's already proven that they've done that in California. Freedom of Information Act was filed by Judicial Watch, that the government was given directives to social media, probably in exchange for less regulations or whatever it is that they, to make their life less hell. And they're doing the same thing in New York. A lot of people know that. I just have to, figure out a way to prove it, that they're giving initiatives to Facebook, to Twitter, so they're breaking the First Amendment, which is the government can't control speech, and they're doing it. They're using social media as their arm to change the narratives in America to what they want. And I know this for a fact, and I'm going to prove it.
So that's really key. I know with Elon Musk's tender to buy Twitter, there are congressional subpoenas being readied for records of the executives and the board, which I'm sure after the midterms that there'll be some investigations into some of these companies trying to see if there was conspiracy to shut people down. But you said something important there, Cara. You said Facebook told you your ban was irreversible, so not just a temporary thing.
I couldn't even. I've never even gotten to Facebook jail. Everyone's like, I'm in Facebook jail. They think it's cute. It's not cute. I never got anything like that. Never got a warning. I'm so respectful with everything I do. I carefully write everything I write. Because I don't like to offend people. I'd rather people listen to what I have to say. Like I don't want to offend people on the left and turn them off to me because I'm trying to reach a point of understanding.
Mhm,
That's my
mhm.
goal. My goal isn't to like flaunt things in their face. So I'm always very careful. How can I reach other people instead of turning other people off? And I've always had that mentality when it came to social media. I was never in any type of way like a person who's tweeting crazy things or writing crazy things. And I was just posting a lot of articles I was writing, showing what was going on with these January 6 prisoners, illegal mandates and stuff like that. And for whatever the reason, they banned me. And when I went to appeal it, they said it's irreversible. So I wrote a letter to Facebook. I brought it to their headquarters in New York City. I haven't heard back from them. I'd probably have to get a professional lawyer. But what I'm just going to do is, after speaking to people from Judicial Watch, they said file a Freedom of Information Act with certain government bodies. See if you're on a watch list. See if you're on a government watch list, because the FBI's been to my house for any reason, because they're literally putting people on watch lists that are like anti-vaccine people, like people that oppose mandates, people that organize rallies. They're now being put on government watch lists. This has happened in California, and it was proven. And then they're probably taking an initiative from the government. Anybody on this watch list, like throw them off social media or whatever. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to get to the bottom of why I was kicked off Facebook. And I think it's going to affect a lot more people than just me, because it's happening to so many people. It's almost like the norm now. It's normal to just.
That's crazy, Scott. I mean, do you still keep scrapbooks? I mean, we put our photos on the cloud, right? We put our photos on, and many people use Facebook as their scrapbooks for years and years. So you can't download anything.
No. And I asked them very nicely if they, really heartfelt letter, please just let me have like my property back, like, which I guess isn't mine because I signed the Facebook agreement. But I was like, could I please have my grandmother's photos and we were singing Christmas carols one year. I really wanted that video. I just never thought I'd get thrown off, and I never took the time to download all of this stuff off. All the blogs I wrote. I did a rally. I did a MAGA BLM rally. That was the only and probably first successful one of its kind, right before January 6th, where we all came together for a rally. And like that got so much, it went viral. And I had all the pictures from that, and a really beautiful people duplicated the copied and pasted my whole like post I wrote and put it in articles, because they couldn't believe Black Lives Matter and Trump supporters came together for a cause. And it was so inspirational, and like just stuff like that I want back. I want what I wrote back. I want all my pictures back. I want my grandparents' photos back. I want this stuff from 2010 back. I'm like, can I at least have an archive of my things? And they didn't even reply. And I had a lawyer send them a letter, and they don't care. They're just too powerful. Like, why would they care about me? You know what I mean? Why would they care about my memories? So, and they're absolutely out of control, and they should have let me appeal it in the very least. It could have been a computer glitch. Who knows? It wasn't though. It definitely wasn't. And they just can't keep getting away with this, especially when we know very well that the government, they're taking cues from the government. It's not just the private company excuse anymore.
Yeah. Cara, it's been wonderful talking to you. We really appreciate your time, and we know you're very busy, lots of stuff going on. Before we leave, I'd love to have you tell people where they can find you.
Sure. You can find me on Twitter right now. It's at Cara Castronuova, spelled with a CaraCastrn. I'm sorry, CaraCastronuova. You can find me on citizensapp.us, Citizens Against Political Persecution. Reach out to me on my website, caracastronova.com, and you can write to me there. And also check me out on Newsmax, 10 p.m. Saturday nights on Wise Guys, and read the Gateway Pundit. It's a great news outlet, and I write for them. And I'm always breaking news on there, and we tell the truth. We're the real news.
Great. Cara, thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Cara.
You're welcome. Thank you.